So, are you ready with your course business that if something happens in your life or your life goes crazy like mine did in January, is your business prepared to handle it? And what kinds of things should you have in place? This is one of those preventative episodes that I hope you'll listen to and take a few notes because it can make your life so much easier at a really, really tough time. So, let's get to it.
Welcome to the Course Creators HQ podcast, helping you navigate the latest techniques for creating and marketing online courses. And now, here is your host, Julie Hood.
So welcome to episode 178, and I actually am so grateful that I get to record this episode with you because let me tell you, it has been a month. We are just at the beginning of 2024, and I was so excited because January 1st kicked off so well. I had all my plans in place. I knew what was happening, where I was focusing, and what I was going to be doing. And then on the 2nd, I got a call from my family that my mom was headed to the hospital in an ambulance, and she was very, very sick. She ended up spending the first couple weeks in the ICU at the hospital. She went home, had another episode, had to be taken back in the ambulance again. So we basically spent the entire month of January at the hospital with her, plus my dad was staying with me. And then I went to stay with them. And so it was just one of those months. And then when I finally got home, I got sick. So let's just say it's been a lot. But let's be honest, this is life. Like, this is how things go. This is what happens to us. And as I was reflecting back on the month, I thought, there's some good things in here of lessons that I should share with you because are some things that I had in place or I wish I had in place that would have made the month a lot easier as far as making sure my business kept going. Because honestly, when you are running your own business, it's not like when you're an employee where you can take vacation or you can take leave or you still get paid, even though all these things are going on. When you're running your own business and you don't get to do the business, it can have an impact. So there's some things you can do, and that's what I want to get into today on ways to be prepared when life happens. So it's just what happens, and so how are we going to deal with it? So first off, I have to say, I have the most incredible clients and customers. They were all so incredibly supportive and understanding. And that's where I want you to start if something happens. What are your clients expecting from you? And what absolutely has to be done to support them? And should you send them an email with an update so they know what's going on and giving them a heads up? So I was including in my emails that I was sending out, like, hey, I'm sorry if I don't get back to you, if something falls through the cracks. I'm doing the best I can. It's been a month. So that's the first thing. And then number 2, on your courses and your coaching, what is the minimum that you need to do so that things can keep moving forward? And one of the challenges that we had is we didn't know, was this going to take a week? Was it going to take 2 weeks? It ended up being a month. And so every week I was back in kind of the same position of, yeah, I still can't do my coaching calls this week. So think about, that long term and how are you planning to handle it? The third thing is your weekly emails. And I'm actually pretty proud of this one. I did manage to send out 28 emails in January, which was a big accomplishment. And one of the things I think that was most important, because when you disappear off the radar and people don't hear from you, it's a little bit more challenging to get that connection back again. So keep up those weekly emails and make sure you have a way that you can work on them even, at the hospital, if you're off at, when I was staying at my parents' house, I took my computer so I could still work. The one thing that didn't happen, obviously, as a listener, you will notice this, was the podcast. And I only got 2 episodes out during the month of January. And part of that was my fault because I had previewed the last episode, the episode 177, and I told everyone it was coming, and it needed a lot of note taking. Like, it needed time to get ready and to share it. So I didn't want to not put that one as the next episode. So part of that was on me for not for doing it that way. But my big lesson on the podcast is I want to have at least 2 episodes that are completely recorded. The notes are done. All I have to do is upload it, and it should only take 5 minutes when everything is ready and good to go. So that is on my list, to get 2 episodes that are extras, basically, that I have. Okay, the next thing to think about is your technology. And so this was where one of the things really came in handy. When we were hauling back and forth to the hospital, I had an iPad that I could do a lot on, and I didn't have to take my full laptop, my huge laptop that was heavy, to carry around the hospital all day. So it was nice to have the iPad that was available and then have some more portable tech. So think about your technology and how portable are you if you need to be, or where could you add in some things, and then testing out to make sure okay, if I'm working off my iPad, are my passwords available? Can I get into the sites that I need to? Do they even work from an iPad? That kind of thing. Then the next challenge that I have was like trying to make myself focus when I only had maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Because in the role I was playing in all of this, I was the chief communicator. So as we would get updates from the doctors and the nurses, then I was the one messaging and texting and trying to keep everybody up to speed on what was going on. And then I was sitting there, thinking about my mom and what was happening, and is there something else we need to be doing? So it was really, really hard to make myself focus on an email or on the next thing that I needed to be doing. So here's a couple ideas. I did go a couple times to a different place in the hospital. So they sometimes will have like smaller waiting rooms, or there was this great spot that had a bunch of windows and a table so that I could just sort of get away once in a while and try to focus. Plus, if you have focus music, which I have talked about in the past, any kind of music that helps you focus, anything that you're currently doing to help yourself focus, you need to crank it up by 10 when you've got something challenging like this going on. Next up, and this one seems very obvious, but that's, who do you have on your team who can help support you during this time? And this was a little bit challenging on my end because I was in between assistants. And so I ended up actually having my daughter help me out at one point. And so one of the things I realized that was a big challenge was I was the only one who could send out emails. I hadn't trained anyone else on how to do that. And I had done that on purpose, intentionally, because my emails are so important. I really wanted to be the one who is sending them out and taking care of them. However, you do need a backup. So I'm going to do some work to make sure I've got somebody as a backup that can help with that and can get in and send things out, especially to let customers know what's going on. The next thing that really helped, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, is how I have automatic social media posts going out. So even though I wasn't physically posting things, there were still posts going out on my behalf. So I'll link to an episode where I talked about how I did this, but that was really fantastic that I didn't have to think about social media. And then the next thing, I did have one refund that I did because someone was upset something didn't happen on the day it was supposed to. So, that's just a part of doing business, and it was what was needed to take care of customers, and that was part of this whole experience. Next up, and this is kind of a big one for you in particular, and that's your mindset, your self-care, and your sleep. And so all three of these, when you're in the middle of a crisis and things are a mess, they're all the things we kind of let fall off the radar. And I want to just bring them up so that you can try to add them in little pieces whenever you can. And I think that's part of the reason I got sick, was I wasn't getting enough sleep, and it just all snowballs. So mindset, self-care, and sleep when you're going through one of these things. And then this is more of a personal one, but I will say we had so many people praying for us and for my mom, and it got me through. So thank you to everyone who's listening, who said a prayer for me. I really appreciate it. Next up, make sure you've got some emergency savings. So if your revenue has to take a hit, you've got some savings there to help cover that. And then the last thing is, what can you actually just cut out and remove? And I'll give you a couple. We started using paper plates so we didn't have to deal with dishes. And I wouldn't do that all the time, but it was a challenging month. Then I was keeping it super simple with lots of ponytails and buns for my hair. 1 week, instead of doing live calls, I had my students emailing in their questions. So anything that you can remove to make life a little bit easier, it would be good to have those things already in your mind, because part of the challenge I found was that I wasn't able to think through things as well as I normally do. There were so many new things that we were dealing with that trying to just think through my normal situation was a bit of a challenge. So that's why I wanted to do this episode, is I wanted you to spend a few minutes and at least think about, okay, if something happens and you need to get a message out to your coaching clients and your course students, how would you do it? Who would you call? How would it happen? And make some notes about some of these things. And I would say those were the biggest lessons learned on my part. Was I want to have at least 2 episodes that are ready to go for the podcast. I want to have someone who can send out emails on my behalf. And then I definitely want to be ready to ask for help whenever necessary. It was, incredible that my daughter could step in, and she helped out with a Kajabi promotion that was time sensitive. So we got through it and we made it. And thank you to everyone who was supportive and helpful. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope this episode gives you something to kind of mull over and think about for your own course business or your coaching business. How would you handle it if a crisis suddenly happened? Do you have some plans in place and some ideas on how you could keep moving forward? So thanks for listening. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if this was something that made you feel a little bit more prepared. I'd love to hear it. And thanks again for being a subscriber. Even though we only had 2 episodes in January, I really, really appreciate you following and subscribing and leaving reviews and letting me know what's working and what's not working for you. I totally appreciate it. And I'm wishing you well. Have an incredible week. Here's to lots of course sales this week, or just getting that darn course up and running. I wish you well, and thank you for listening. Take care.